Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Mobile Device Security How to Stay Ahead of Cyber Threats webinar. My name is Gary Ulaner, and I'm the Director of Product Management for Endpoint Security at Trellix. And really a pleasure to be able to talk to you folks today about the need for mobile device security beyond what you have in your typical mobile device manager. Today, I am joined by Joe Brown, who is the principal engineer at Zimperium. And just to clear things up before I turn over to Joe, is he's Zimperium and Trellix. Trellix mobile security is what we're talking about today, but it is powered by the excellent cyber technology brought to the table by Zimperium. Joe, want to introduce yourself?
Certainly. Good day, everyone. Joe Brown here. As mentioned, I'm one of the senior engineers here at Zimperium and a mobile security specialist. And we're going to get started today with quite a bit of activities. We're going to go through mobile security. We're going to look at a live hack on an Android device. I think we're going to get started right away.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Just for everybody's education, we're going to be presenting, and then we do a little bit of a demo, some more presentation, and then we're going to try to have a Q&A session at the end. If you're interested in asking a question, you go ahead and click on the Ask a Question tab, enter that information, and we'll go ahead and get to your response towards the end of the presentation. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about Trellix Mobile Security, protecting the most used drive. So let's talk about why people talk about why we need to talk about mobile endpoint detection and response. You think about your mobile phone, and now as I was thinking about doing this webinar, I thought to myself, well, you can see I'm not a youngster here, but it used to be the kind of days when you'd walk out of the house and you'd pat yourself down. I got my car keys, I have my wallet. And nowadays, it's more than that. I have my car keys, do I have my wallet, and do I have my mobile phone? Because I feel like today we are all tethered to our mobile phones, whether it's for personal use or whether it's for business use. You think about, you go on vacation, you have your mobile device. I tell myself all the time, I am not going to look at email. I'm not going to look at anything on my mobile device having to do with work. And sure enough, every moment I get, because I don't want to get behind on emails, because they never stop coming when you're on vacation, constantly looking at the emails, triaging them, reacting to them very quickly, and moving on. So, we've really become tethered to those devices, especially since the pandemic, when you've seen an explosion of usage through like Zoom or WebEx or Google Meet. Everybody is using these collaboration tools to go along. So what we're seeing basically is, you've got just a massive explosion of mobile apps, and we're all, lulled into a false sense of, security that, hey, any app that I download, say from the Google Store or from the Apple, store, is been quality tested, has no vulnerabilities, and it's not going to, be a bad actor on my phone. And we willy-nilly just go ahead and download these, these mobile apps. We use our mobile phones to conduct just all kinds of mobile transactions. I do my personal banking on my mobile phone. I do all kinds of HR stuff related to work through my mobile phone. I collaborate constantly, whether it be through chat or whether it be through some level of video conference with everybody at work and my personal friends as well. And then we're just accessing just a huge amount of data. So the bottom line is, it is ingrained in our beings, our mobile phones. And what's interesting is, you think about your work laptop. Your work laptop is very well secured by IT folks at your company. And yes, you most likely have a bring your own device policy at your work, where you bring in your mobile device. But I think all of us look at our mobile devices as saying, oh, this is just a mobile phone. It's not a laptop. There's not the kind of exploits and the vulnerabilities and the problems and security issues that can appear on a phone. So we tend to treat them more as just a peripheral device rather than a really security device.
That's a great point, Gary. And if you think about what we use our mobile devices for, You hit a bunch of on a bunch of them, but these things are our identification. There are multiples of factors of authentication for us. There are wallets, there are IDs in our passports. It's a lot more than those traditional endpoints that you mentioned. As a matter of fact, a lot of them, Android, iOS, Chrome OS in some cases, there's actually quite a bit of vulnerabilities in there. Let's take a look at some of those.
So when you take a look at the vulnerability gaps, first of all, kind of take a look at the graph itself, and you kind of see kind of where we're at in 2024, and you kind of take a look at the over time, and this is very much a typical hockey stick approach where things just start to escalate exponentially over time, whether it be the proliferation of unmanaged devices, or the mobile threats, explosion of applications, which I mentioned before, continuous innovations by companies with their applications. But question being, are those innovations solid? Are they secure? Then you've got regulations and privacy issues out there. So you've got a huge amount of vulnerability gaps that are out there. And so, what are some typical negative consequences of not being able to answer these vulnerability gaps? You get reputation damage. That's probably the biggest hurt that a company can experience due to a cybersecurity event, is that brand reputation. Just on the mobile side itself, there's $29 billion worldwide impact from digital fraud, from everything from phishing attacks to banking attacks, whatever it be. Then you have a board level priority where they viewed 88% of companies view cyber risk as a business risk. It absolutely is a business risk. So, the threat is real, whether it be a state-sponsored, cyber attack, or somebody that's just going off and trying to, extort money from somebody. It's very, very real. You think about the cyber criminals out there. The cyber criminals are very, very savvy folks, right? So think about it. If I was a bad player, I could easily identify somebody and say, okay, well, let's say I want to, establish some sort of command control in a financial industry, for example, a financial banking company. Well, I can easily go to LinkedIn. I can go ahead and I can find a person that I want to go ahead and attack. I can now that I have that person's name, I go to social media. I learn everything I can about that person. And then I go into LinkedIn again and I say, did that person post anything about their company, maybe a project they're working on, or some level of detail about the company? Then go back in and say, well, let me see who that person's boss might be, or let me find maybe an executive level person in that company. Next thing you know, as I've now weaponized an email to that person, it's very easy to guess, what the format of an email of a company is. Once you have that, I can now start delivering what we call spear phishing attacks, where I am actually actively going after people in the corporation based on maybe it's an email coming from the masked as their boss, or maybe the CEO, or maybe an operations person. And it could be just an email saying, hey, Gary, I see you're working on, or X person, I see you're working on a particular project. But go ahead and want to, update some information. Click on this link. And next thing you know is, person has clicked on the link, and now, the cyber criminal has established some sort of command and control capabilities to go do other nefarious work within your company. So believe it or not, it does happen, and it's very, very simple to happen, actually. And that's something we really need to protect ourselves against.
The advanced persistent threats is a huge concern here. It's not just commodity stuff, whereas the commodity stuff is out there. But yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. The delivery methods, they're no different from any other vector. The one thing that we do have on mobile as an additional vector, which of course we have full coverage for, is delivering those phishing messages outside of email. So start thinking about your messaging apps. For social media, think of those things like WeChat and WhatsApp. those are certainly delivery mechanisms that have been and continue to be exploited for delivering that initial vector, which we're going to talk about next.
Great point, Joe. So let's take a look at the four attack vectors here, and what we coin this as something called DNAP, which is Device Network Applications and Phishing. So if you take a look at device, 65% of devices are running with an OS with critical vulnerabilities. I'm guilty of this myself. A lot of times I'm not plugged in at night, and I don't get all the updates that I get from my Apple phone for my iOS updates, for example. And I know there's just a ton of critical vulnerabilities out there that could be exploited. Network-wise, 1 in 5 enterprises experience a network attack. I think that's pretty well known. You think about again, go back to the olden days when you had your traditional desktop computer or a laptop, and you had really your major operating system were Windows and Mac at that point, and all the bad players were really going after those two operating systems. And a lot of people, when the iPhone first came out, even myself, I said, well, gosh, they're not even going after Apple users, or even like when Google Chrome came out, they weren't really going after them. But today, there's such a proliferation of mobile devices, and the way that they're used, as we explained before, used in everyday life, is that we're seeing many, many more, and we're seeing the what do you want to call it, the attack vectors growing exponentially. And then kind of had Joe alluded to with these advanced persistent threats that are achieved through phishing. 90% of breaches start with phishing. And you think about your phone, that is pretty much the main entry point into your corporation, is right through your email, which is directly on your mobile phone.
Indeed. So let's take a look at how we would implement this. This is where we start to go to the dark side in our little webinar here. And essentially what we want to do is we want to take the DNAP. Those are those 4 attack vectors on a mobile device. And we're going to apply those to what we call a cyber kill chain. Now, I want to go through, a lot of you are probably very familiar with the cyber kill chain as it were. And I'll give you an example of what one would look like. But one of the things I really want to point out here as we go through it is you'll notice underneath each one of these steps. Now, these steps would match up not only to a cyber kill chain, but you'll also find these in the MITRE attack frameworks as well. But at each point, what we're talking is attempting to deliver multiple exploits. We're not going to be one and done to where we try to attack a device and just give up because the first thing didn't pan out for us. Each one of these attack vectors and these attack steps are well orchestrated. They're practiced in advance, and most of them are going to be automated. So the days of thinking of somebody, hand jamming some commands into a keyboard, that's what I plan on doing, but that's not what happens in reality. Everything is automated. It's all shell scripts. So what you're going to see me do here in a couple minutes is actually done within milliseconds on a device. But it's hard to, we want to split that up a little bit so you can see what we're doing here. Now, whenever we talk about attacks on a device, we're going to look at it from more of a purple perspective of not a good guy or a bad guy here. We're just going to look at what happens whenever a device is compromised. Now, when we do that, there's the idea that a device to be fully compromised has to have a jailbroken or rooted state. That's what we talk about when we have a full compromise at the operating system level with traditional endpoints. But just like with traditional endpoints, you don't necessarily need to get to a full kill. And what I want to do is I want to pull your attention to the right side, the compromise detection versus what you see on the other side. So on the other side, this is going to be some of the more commodity players in our space, but it's also going to be different applications outside of mobile threat defense, basic MDMs, mobile device managers. We'll talk about that here shortly. But there's going to be some basic detections, but that's all they're doing. They're looking for a jailbroken state. Well, if you look to the right, there's some 40 different steps in that kill chain that can take place and lead to a device compromise without fully rooting the device. Now, the point there being is, sure, you can go in and get all those 10 steps that do get to a rooted or a jailbroken a device and a detection that would support that. However, if you think about the kill chain, the first place that you want to kill the kill chain is the very first vector. If you can get that, then you don't have to worry about rogue access points, or if you get a rogue access point, drop the connection, and you don't have to worry about me installing malware on your device over the air, tricking you into loading it and then me taking over your device, or at least getting on the device, gathering information, and then exfiltrating that off of the device. You're going to see that in real time in a couple minutes here. But the next slide that I want that Gary's going to talk about here is going to be the 5 principles of mobile security.
Great, thanks, Joe. So let's talk about the 5 principles. So we have prioritize the risk at the edge, right? So your mobile device, your tablets, your laptops, those are really kind of the edge devices, if you will. We need to secure them really across all different apps and devices, any platform. Operate in a known state. So we complete visibility of the mobile ecosystem and risk level, automatically assess vulnerabilities, never throttle productivity, measure audible and insurable. So we want to know that when that mobile device is being operated, it is known from at least from a cyber security perspective. We know what that state is. We know that the signatures are updated, that it is secure, that it abides by the regulations that are put in place, whether it be governmental or public. Set up detection and response. This is a really important and critical step. Detect and prioritize anomalies, contextualize threat response, resolve vulnerabilities, incidents proactively, embed security across device and application lifecycle for tamper-proof, threat-aware mobile experiences. So really what we're saying there is detection and response is key, because you think about just the number of alerts and warnings and everything else that get generated. It becomes a absolute then you take that to scale where you've got thousands or hundreds of thousands of mobile devices you're dealing with. Being able to triage all this information, being able to deal with it is very, very difficult. So that's where a detection and response capability comes into play, where you've got artificial intelligence that's going to go off and be able to really boil up what are the most priority anomalies, and being able to create workflows that address those particular vulnerabilities. Start the anonymous journey, dynamically respond to threats in ever-changing mobile ecosystem, isolating compromised devices and untrusted environments, and scale at a proactively security posture and build resilience. So again, the whole idea behind this is to ensure that those devices are working, they're updated, and that should something occur that is a high priority, vulnerability on the device, being able to recognize that and being able to isolate that particular device and triage it and repair it before it can spread its ilk, if you will, amongst other phones and the network. Never break the law. Make sure that we govern compliance and stay ahead of the global regulations for data sovereignty and privacy regulations. Joe, you have comments on that?
Yeah, actually, there's a couple things. One, and let's talk about operating in a known state. And there was actually a question from the audience. What about Android devices that cannot upgrade to later operating systems? And it's a fantastic question. We run into this a lot. In fact, we find it in 2 areas, and that's going to be line of business devices. So think about those Androids and those iOS devices, for example, that are out being barcode scanners and inventory devices, or scanners for, let's say, for instance, insulin monitors, things of that nature that are going to be Android devices, but may be attached to maybe a different life cycle than a normal handset could be. Another place that we see that is going to be, for instance, the track phones of the world, the pay as you go. Those generally only get a couple years worth of security updates. So what we do is, by operating in that known state and bubbling that information up to the surface, letting you know that, yes, you're on an Android 12 device that got its last security update in October of 2021. Well, knowing that that device has still got to be in your mobile device fleet, you can actually wrap a protection package around it to understand that if there are any attacks, and this kind of goes back to that setting up detection response in your autonomous journey, is that by getting visibility in that any attacks there, that's automatically a higher risk device, so you can treat it differently. So that's how we would address that. But it's a great question, and thanks for that. Let's talk a little bit about what we would call a complementary technology. A lot of our folks that we help out will start off with, listen, some of them don't have mobile device management, but a lot of them will say, listen, I've got a mobile device manager. I'm not sure what my need is from a mobile threat defense perspective, because I've got things like jailbreak detection. We just covered that as to why, it's not necessarily enough. But it's not that you don't need an MDM. It's just that it's more of a better together story. Understand that an MDM, or enterprise mobility manager, its job is to enforce policy and to create and manage configurations on mobile devices. Whereas mobile threat defense, as the name would suggest, is looking for high risk and high security issues on the device itself. And if we can take that information and feed that into, for example, an MDM, you get a better together story. What we can do is the Trellix mobile security application will check into our console, which talks, of course, to the MDM and says, hey, Joe just clicked on a link, downloaded an application. That application turns out to be suspicious. We want to let the MDM know. And then when the MDM knows, it can make changes on the device itself, the affected device itself. Those changes could be conditional access rules, for example. Until I correct my security posture, I won't be able to access, for example, my email or file droppers or any other sensitive data that we know we run our business on and access from anywhere in the world. The good news is that if those conditions on the device clear, the opposite happens. So the notification goes to the MDM in that case, very quickly reconfigures the device and restores access to those sensitive applications so that you can continue to do business. The whole point here is we don't want to impact a person's business. However, we also want to ensure data accuracy and confidentiality, the whole bit, to make sure that the data is never in a compromised state. Gary?
So why Trellix? If you're familiar with Trellix, you might be more familiar with McAfee and FireEye, which is basically the enterprise components of those two companies have combined to create Trellix. But we have a very, very rich heritage. We've been around for 37 years. We have a rich history of machine learning and artificial intelligence, and recognized today, from IDC as a modern, endpoint security leader. I'm not going to go through each one of these line items, but you can see we've been around for a long time. We excel in cybersecurity, and one of the big reasons why you'd want to go why Trellix is the Trellix mobile security is integrated and managed by ePolicy Orchestrator. And it's really critical for companies to administrators, especially, who want to be able to manage, all of their endpoint devices, whether it be a laptop, a printer, a server, a mobile device, all from a central management console, being able to create policy, being able to identify what happens in a remediation event, and being able to report on all that data all within a single management console. And that's what Trellix brings to the table is we have integration with the Zimperium console so that customers can really perform policy management, do everything from a single console. And then, Trellix is an open system, if you will. It's an open ecosystem. So, we've got integrated workflows, unified experience for customers. We have, various engines, which are high performing cybersecurity engines, everything from detection and prioritization, data parsing, threat hunting and forensics, and contextualization and enrichment. And then we have security controls that really cover, where everything is, whether it be endpoint, network, data centers, collaboration, cloud, and integrations with many, many partners. Another important point of this is a singular modular agent. One thing that customers just don't like are having multiple agents for multiple products on endpoints because they collide with each other, they cause problems, difficult to update. So it's nice to have just one agent that's sitting there that is, being ubiquitous with the rest of the system. And then we excel as far as intelligence goes. So from advanced artificial intelligence to being dealing with MITRE, the MITRE folks, Advanced Research Center, and operational threat intelligence. So really from an ecosystem perspective, we are a very an open environment and look at, welcome other players to come in, integrators to integrate our products, and other security vendors to integrate with our products as well to give our customers the best possible cybersecurity protection out there.
I've been on both sides of the cyber threat intelligence that Trellix has, both as an employee, a former employee on both the McAfee and FireEye side, and then, of course, as a consumer outside of that. And I can tell you that it is nation state quality threat intel, and it's some of the best on the planet. Very impressed with the folks there. Well, let's get started. We actually have some interesting things that we're going to show you here. I'm going to get in here real quick. And, cybersecurity professionals, of course, never use saved passwords. Never mind what you just saw there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into my EPO server, and I'm going to go to my Trellix mobile security. And just as a quick overview, this is going to be gathering threat data from the actual console, which I'll show you here in just a moment. But this is going to be an amalgamation of the threat data that we find from the mobile perspective. And you can see here, I've been quite active, just like I had mentioned, by the actual real bad people who do these attacks. They practice it routinely several times. They don't do it until they get it right. They do it until they can't get it wrong. And then the next thing they do is they put everything that you're going to see me doing from a type it in perspective. It's a shell script. Everything that you see here is going to actually take place in real time. But everything that they're doing, again, is going to be a shell script. So been pretty busy here. From here, what I want to do is I will click on configuration. I've already done that, and that takes us into our mobile console. So I'm going to give you a very brief walkthrough through the console, and then we're going to get to the fun stuff. And we're going to beat the snot out of this Android device. It's a Pixel 6 here that I have over to the side. We'll get to him in a minute. He's unsuspecting now. But I'll take you very briefly through the console. From a situational awareness front end, both from a dashboard perspective, but as well as a projectable large object view. And this is going to give you an idea of what the risk from a security and a privacy perspective is throughout your entire mobile fleet here. The next thing that I want to point out is as we go through here, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, we're going to talk about security. We're going to talk about risk. We're going to talk about managing that risk, and we're going to talk about threats. And keep in mind, we're going to do it from the perspective that DNAP, that device, that's going to be the operating system, libraries, drivers, things of that nature, system libraries, etc. Network. We're going to see a network attack here in a second, where I'm going to take what's called a Wi-Fi pineapple by Hack5, and I'm going to create a man-in-the-middle attack, where I'm actually going to have a device connect to me, to my attack box, and I'm actually going to manipulate traffic, and I'm going to push an application to that device itself. Now, that's going to be the application, the A part of it, wherever I'm going to do my attack based from an application perspective, even though I'm delivering it over networks. And then finally, phishing, whenever I see a pop-up, that I'll demonstrate here, you'll see that in action too. So DNAP is going to be here in full force. Let's get started. We're going to talk about operating system risks. This is going to be a view like the audience member who asked a question, is, what about those older devices that may not be getting updates? I've got my beloved iPhone 8. It's the last iPhone with a home button. It will only go to iOS 17, I believe. So no 18, actually 16. So no 17 or Apple Intelligence coming its way. However, I can still get visibility into it, understand, for instance, what CVEs are written against that particular device, and get a view of what my actual threat posture is from a global perspective. But I can also dive in and find out which ones of these devices, for example, is going to have that issue, for example. So you'll notice that we pull in CVEs. We can actually tell if it's remote code execution with elevation of privileges, things of that nature. Now, what's important here, very briefly, is that we pull this information in directly from NIST. The National Institute Standards and Technology is the source of the CVEs, but we do it when they're reserved. We don't wait until they're actually published. So you get visibility into the risk before most people do in that case. The next step is going to be applications. So this is mobile application vetting. I encourage you to look that up. There's actually a great NIST document on it. I believe it's 800-163 that covers as mobile application vetting, getting full visibility into the applications in your environment so that you can make choices as to whether that particular application, for example, is going to be allowed, denied, or simply marked as out of compliance. In other words, being out of compliance, there's nothing necessarily wrong with the app. It just doesn't have a place in this workplace organization, for example. So visibility into that, it's real simple to just get we'll look at Telegram here, to get a report on it. So for instance, these are all betas up here. When we get down to the 10s, you'll see that those are the latest ones. Now, what we can do is actually have a report on that and get a full view as to what's going on. Let me make this a little bit bigger so everybody can see. We're very briefly going to go through this, but you get full visibility into what the application does, what the actual permissions are, mapping it against various compliance frameworks, including each one of our findings and any sort of recommendations, for example, as to how to apply it. And all of our findings are, of course, going to be matched against the various compliance frameworks or vulnerability frameworks. The last thing we do, this is done with static and dynamic analysis, where static analysis, we actually decompile the application and look at the SDKs, the source code, and we tell you what we find, including the good and the bad. The last thing that we do, and you'll see it right past here, is the dynamic analysis. One of the things we do is we track behavior, is we tell you where this particular application talks. Now, this is called Telegram, and it's actually coded by a gentleman who lives in Russia. So whenever we go through, where did this device actually, or this application actually talk to, it may not be too surprising to see that it does talk to Russia. Now, one of the things we do mention is that the context of where it talks is important. Yes, it talks to a site in Russia. Where does it talk? It talks to yandex.ru, which is largely analogous to yahoo.com. So as you can see here, we give you green lights from a reputation perspective, vulnerability perspective, the quality of the SSL library, and of course the registrant for the domain. If it's involved in malware distribution, spam, fast flux networks, DNS tomfoolery, we will catch it and call that a bad app for you. You take that information, and of course you can come back up here and mark that application as either out of compliance, or you can allow it or deny it. By allowing it, you can basically say, even if it does come up with malicious activity, I'll need to permit this, for example. Now, without further ado, let's get into the attack, and then we're going to come back to this guy here and view what we see. Now, one thing to note is you'll notice I have an initial an alert here, and it's just a reminder to restart my device. Now, the reason this is in place is about a month and a half ago, the NSA, the National Security Agency in the US, actually came out and made a recommendation that everybody hard reboot their devices, Android and iOS and Chrome, at least weekly. And what this does is it tells the device that if there's any code running in memory, including malicious code, it will actually wipe that out. And if there's no persistence, you've basically fixed an attacked device. Speaking of which, let's attack a device. Get a little Control Tab here. Okay, so let's talk about what we have here. This is Kali Linux, and it's running as a VM here on my Mac laptop. Now, hanging off of my Mac laptop is what I call what's called a Wi-Fi pineapple. What it does is it allows me to set my Linux here up as a man-in-the-middle attack. So in this case, what I'm doing, and I'll just come up here, I've got a little module up here called Pine AP. And what this allows me to do is spoof SSIDs, or wireless IDs here. And you'll see that I've got a couple of SSIDs that or wireless network names that I'm using. One is called Acme. Now, Acme is a company, fictitious company. I think it's actually a real company, but for our sake, it's a fictitious company, and it's one that I'm going to target. Now, I'm going to target this company. Their headquarters is right around the corner, and I'm in a cyber cafe where I know that folks from Acme tend to come after work or get out of the office to do a little work on the side. So between that and, of course, the totally safe Wi-Fi, no reason to not connect to that. Nothing can possibly go wrong there. So the last thing to do here is I want to set up the fact that there's no clients connected. Note here, I've got, this is a Pixel 6. As you can see here, it's just a normal phone. I will tell you it's running a version behind. So I'm on iOS 13, and I think I've got a service pack very purposefully. That's why my attack works. Patching works. Please patch your phones. But it's, I believe, January of 2023 is the service pack. So it's well over a year old. This is, in a word, a vulnerable device. Now, within the product itself, within the agent itself, what it will tell you is if your device is vulnerable and what have you. Just very briefly, so you can see what I'm talking about. There are detections within the policy itself. Some of those would be, for example, an actively exploited Android or iOS device. I have those turned down so that I will get a green screen. What this is doing is emulating basically a pristine, up-to-date phone. And what we're going to do is put a 0-day attack on this phone. Now, that's what we're doing. Now, I'm taking a lot of liberties on my phone that you'll see. Let's get started with the attack. First thing I need to do is I want to set up my attack device here. So the thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get a shell. One of my favorite things to do is a root shell. So I'm going to bring him down here. Actually, that's not the root shell. There's my root shell. Okay. Now, I should have, let's see, yeah, I'm up and running here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into my test cases. And just to be 1,000% sure, I think, yeah, here we go. There we go. Demo gods are not with me. There we go. Okay, we're good. Let's do a quick PWD. Test cases, and let's do test case 2. Now, what this is, and I'll just do a quick view of it. This is a directory where I have my attack script in here. You can see it right there. Now, it's not a complete kill chain. I will be hand jamming some things in. Not much to see, just kind of some standard things there. But what I will point out a couple things is beyond my exploit here, my attack sequence, I do have a couple of other things that I could use: exploit, GHSL, and my GPU. Those are 3 exploits that I have that target specific things on this phone. But that's for a full root. And remember, I'm not going to jailbreak this purposefully. I'm going to show you that I can get on the device, not root it, and still exfil information off of the device itself. So here's where the fun starts. I'm going to run attack. Now you'll notice that there's that tac CEGHSL. If I ran that, that would be a full root, but I am not going to do that. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to give it a name. Now this is going to set up my pop-up for the user to click on. This is going to be my initial vector. So I'm going to target Acme. And then my Wi-Fi pineapple is already set up. And I'm going to push that attack down. Now, a couple little setup things here. I'm going to use my second Ethernet port. Not worried there. It's just saying that I've already got my Wi-Fi pineapple up. So you can see here, it's ready to accept connections. Yep, all good to go. All right. So now my job over here is to connect to the Wi-Fi. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, networks, internet, and you'll see I'm attached to an SSID that's sitting right here on my desk. It's called Snow Crash. Okay. Now there's a couple others. One is called Free Wi-Fi, and there's a couple of them there that I'm showing. As I get through here, there's probably going to be another one poking up, but I want to point out. Notice that this free Wi-Fi right here, which would be at the cyber cafe, it's got a cryptographic key. Yet there's this one right here, and I just happen to know this SSI or this MAC address happens to be this guy. But what I'm going to do is I could actually tap on him and get to it, but my Acme came up, so I'm going to tap on that. Now, remember, I am spoofing the Acme company's Wi-Fi, so it would be real important for me to actually broadcast out the Acme SSID from a Wi-Fi perspective to encourage this device to automatically connect. So now that I'm on that, a couple things to note. One is I've already got a notification from Trellix saying I'm on a rogue access point. It doesn't have a cryptographic key. So you won't have a cryptographic key. It's all in clear text. I got a hit that Acme is in rogue Wi-Fi, which means that this access point's not just unsecure, but it is purposefully broadcasting somebody else's SSID, redirecting traffic, and is capable of delivering malware. That's all just in our single alert so far. I haven't done anything to the device itself. Now, What's important here is remember in that kill chain, our job as defenders, we shut this down right here. We don't let it progress. This is where it ends. However, that makes for a really not fun demo. And I did promise a hack. So we're going to ignore that like any good user would. Okay. So what I want to do, a couple things I want to do. That's tags. I'm going to take a look. I can come up here and refresh and you'll see that I'm attacked. I mean, I've got one on there and I'm actually this 42.232 and that's this pixel device. That's what I'm interested in seeing. But just to validate on the phone, I'm going to look at the network information and sure enough, I'm .232. So what I want to do is I'm going to come over to my attack script and I'm going to type in 232 and hit enter. Now it's trying to see if it can make a connection. And here in a second, you're going to see that it will make a connection. Let me get back to here so we can see the other stuff that's going to kick off. Okay, boom, made the connection and press enter to do the attack. Now what it's going to do is it's going to make a special APK, or basically that's the extension that a Android mobile application does. Now you'll notice here, I got my Metasploit. It's up and running. It's creating its listener right now. And now it's waiting for me to make my connection. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to absent-mindedly open up my browser. I'm going to go to acme.com. And if the demo gods are with me, awesome, they are. You'll notice that not only is this my corporation here, but it's also asking me to download an application. Now, in real life, most of this is even bypassed because we're injecting this using an exploit. I just don't have an exploit to do this. So I've got to rely on the user to actually say, yeah, download that anyway. What could possibly go wrong? Up here, I'm going to open the app and I'm going to install it. Now, my phone, because I do have, this is straight from Kali Linux, and even the most rudimentary detections will find that it's saying, hey, this actually is unsafe. This is Google Play Protect doing its job. However, if we're talking 0 day, it's never going to see this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tap on more details and I'm going to install anyway. I'm going to open it. And of course, all of these horrible permissions, I am going to accept. And it says older version, but I don't care. Look at this over here. I've got a connection. So what I'm going to do, go ahead and get that instantiated. And I'm going to start my kill chain. Make sure I'm on one. I sure am. All right, let's see, make sure that I know exactly where this guy is. I'm going to do geolocate on him. So this gives me the precise lat long of exactly where that is. And if I had a Google API key, I could click on that and it would show me exactly as an attacker where this device is. The next thing I'm going to do is just to make sure I'm on that pixel, I'm going to grab a sysinfo. Sure enough, there I am. It's on that Android 13. I can tell exactly what I need to do. If I did need to do an extended exploit on this and start pulling, for example, all the attachments out of Google Drive, I could see what apps are on here. I think it's, if I recall correctly. No, yeah, I meant app list. Missed it by one. Very, very helpful, by the way, for auto correcting. So there's every application on this device. If I wanted to load an application, Trojanize it, basically I haven't rooted device, but I can have my way with this device, anything I want to do, just to make sure that I know that I was here and that, let's say, for instance, I wanted to move laterally off of this device by choosing to make it send an email to somebody this person knows. Simply grab the, let's dump contacts. Now, as we're going through here, you can see that the device itself, and I apologize, I was supposed to have that up so you could see it. The device itself has found everything that I did. The side-loaded app, the fact that it's suspicious when I downloaded it, the fact that it was suspicious when I instantiated it. So again, anything that you see here from this perspective, that's an opportunity to stop that kill chain by taking some sort of terminating action on the device. So you can see I got the contact list here. I'll take a look at it real quick. It's this one that I just grabbed, and you can see there's got a single contact in here. Just so you can see that. I believe contacts are somewhere in here. Let's see, contacts. And sure enough, it's just that single Joe Apple that you see here. Sure enough, it maps. So if I wanted to send an email from this device to a colleague, in this case, this Joe Apple person, I can send an email to them here, click on this link and repeat my process. So in other words, I've moved laterally. Having that visibility into it, into a device, not just from the bad person's perspective. And as in any good bad person's job, they will go through and get rid of the ability for forensics to see, the logs and what have you, to see my activities. Normally, I would delete that, and then I would not exit, I would quit and get off of that device, take my data and move on. But the point is that during that, I got caught. Now, this is detection only. Anything that I wanted to do, for example, in there, let's go ahead and take a look at the threats, and you'll see my attack here. Now, I'm going to do both pending and fixed. I'll talk about that here in a second, but you'll see the individual attacks, not only the ones that I was doing earlier. You see those are fixed, but you can still see that there's some out there that are pending. What pending means is that, for instance, this application is still on there. So if I click on install, do I want to get rid of it? I absolutely do. So once I do that, it'll actually start to normalize my detections here. And if we come up here and refresh, let's see, suspicious app, we're going to look to see either that guy or that guy go from pending to fixed. There we go, fixed and fixed. So I still have that once Android, which is still on there. So for instance, if I want to go in there and get rid of him, I could certainly do that. Fix, get rid of him, uninstall, and then we're back in good shape. We're in a green state for that. The only thing that I need to do now is get off of that stupid Wi-Fi rogue access point. So we'll come over here, click on internet, go back to snow crash where we know it's safe. Come back over here. Now my device is in a completely green state. Do a quick refresh over here and you'll see now we're all fixed. Right off the bat. The telemetry that you get is fantastic. We'll tell you with a simple click, not only what information we were able to acquire off of the device. Here's that geolocation that we do, not that the bad guy did, but you can see exactly where this is. So the little building around here is a cyber cafe from this building right here, which is Acme World headquarters. And you can see there's the SSID. Any forensics that's off of the device is going to be available there. You see, oh, yep, that's a Metasploit Trojan. That's what Joe is using to attack me right there. We shared a bit. We've got just a couple minutes left. I don't see any questions. I hope you guys learned something today. Mobile devices are ubiquitous. We use it in our private lives. We use the same devices in our business lives, our professional lives. And I think it's worth protecting. And there's a way to do it. And the best way to do it is using Trellix Mobile Security. Gary, got any closing thoughts for us?
I just want to just commend you. I thought that was an excellent demonstration of how to go in and hack a mobile device. And, you did it very, very simply there, Joe. And, the bad guys out there are much more sophisticated and have ways of doing things. and it can become a very, very vulnerable endpoint at the end of the day. So yes, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for joining. Hopefully gain some information about the fact that you do really need some level of mobile threat prevention or protection on your devices, and that products like Zimperium and Trellix Mobile are really the de facto standard in mobile threat defense. And with that, well, thank you and have a great afternoon. And